Welcome to What Do You Want to Do, the show that will hopefully help you figure out what you want to do in life or reconnect you to what you love doing. Each show has a guest who is doing what they want to do, whether it's in their career or in addition to their regular job. Most importantly, we want to help you realize that no matter your age, you too can do what you want to do if you have the will to do it. Now here's your host, Leonard Kaplan.
Welcome to What Do You Want to Do? I'm Leonard Kaplan, and another guest is here with me on remote, of course, through Zoom. His name is Chris Pantazelos. How are you doing, Chris?
Hi, Len. Thank you for having me on. I'm doing great. Thank you. How you doing?
Great. So the audio is good. We were having technical difficulties earlier. Now we should be able to do this fine. So, Chris, you are what they call a luthier. Explain to the audience what a luthier is.
So the word luthier means, luthier means maker of lutes in French. And the lute is another instrument. It's like a bowback mandolin, people may know, or the Renaissance lute, some other people may know. It's like a guitar, but a pear-shaped body. They're not that common in this country, but they are in other countries. Greek bazuki, the Irish bazuki, all of those belong to the lute family. So luthier is a maker of lutes, guitars, even a violin maker is technically a luthier or luthier.
So in Greece, where you're from, is that where the profession originated?
Well, the profession of luthiers, it's kind of hard to say because string instruments have been made for thousands of years. They go way back to the Middle East and Africa and so on. And actually, interestingly enough, in some parts of the world, there are such early instruments that predate even before they started using a lot of wood. Like in the Middle East, where there are forests, the modern form of the instrument existed. In other words, wooden body, wooden neck, wooden soundboard. In Africa, actually, it was common, and it still is to this day, to have instruments that have animal skins on them. For example, like the banjo is an instrument that came out of that tradition. So the luthiers, the whole craft goes back thousands of years, and we could say, all over Europe and the Middle East and Africa and so on. I mean, as long as there have been humans around, it looks like they've been making musical instruments and music. And obviously the instruments were simpler in the beginning. Even a stick with a string on it is technically a string instrument. A bow is a string instrument if you pluck. So I don't know. I can't tell you who the first luthier was, but I suppose in Greek mythology, you can sort of, there was a tradition of Greek mythology kind of credit who the inventor of the Greek lyre, harp was, and so on. I mean, most people would know of Apollo, the Greek god, and so on. But we, in actuality, we don't.
You and I met when I did a documentary on you after we had met with a whole bunch of people at the old Whaley's restaurant in Saugus, if you remember that. That was in the 80s.
That was, yes, I remember that, yes.
And together we made The Art of the Luthier, which was a little documentary, and it was really, really fun, and it opened up a whole new world to me that I didn't know existed. What started you into that world? I mean, it's very rare, this profession. How did you find it?
Yes, so I was thinking, like I said, that when I watched interviews with some of your other guests, I became curious, what was this person's, for example, very first interest in a profession as a child? So I'll tell you about mine, and I'd love to hear from your other guests in the future as well. So when I was 4 years old, I grew up in sort of 19th century conditions in the 60s, and no electricity and so on. So the one mechanical apparatus that fascinated me was my mother's sewing machine, which was hand cranked. There was no electricity. And so I wanted to be a tailor. And then by age 10 or 11, I wanted to be an astronaut, after the moon landings and all that. By age 14 and 15, I wanted to be an artist. At age 17, I started playing the guitar. And from there on, I wanted to make guitars also. At age 19, we had moved back here to the US, and I got the materials and some tools and some books from a guitar teacher at the time who also dabbled in Lutherie. And I went down to the basement of the apartment or the house that I was living at the time down in Lynn, Massachusetts. And I made a guitar, classical guitar, which was actually not bad. It wasn't the best job by an amateur without much training. It wasn't the worst. It was okay. It functioned, you know. And I became so fascinated. I wanted to stick with it. In 1985, my guitar needed a little bit of adjustments and repairs, so I was taking some private lessons with a wonderful musician who is now dead. His name was Ruben Gregorian in Belmont. So he sent me to a shop in Belmont that a lot of musicians knew and still probably remember, which was called Unique Strings. It was run by a luthier by the name of Peter Kivelos, who was actually, by total coincidence, he was Greek also, but born here. And he, as soon as I walked into his shop, I presented to him what I needed fixed. But it just dawned on me how fascinating this shop was. And I said, would you take me on as an apprentice? And he said, sure. So that was 1985. And that's how I started with Peter there. And I stayed with Peter all the way till, unfortunately, Peter became ill about 10 years ago. And for the past 5 years, I've been up here in Lowell near my home.
So this is really fascinating because we're seeing your trajectory. First, you want to be a tailor, then you change your mind, and it's almost like dating. You know, you found the one. How did you know that that was the one?
Well, here's what's interesting, Len. I think for most of us, our the influence that we get from our environment, I think, shapes us. Like I said, the fact that my mother had this stone fascinated me that I want to, let's say, work on it. Later on, like I said, by the age of around, 10 or 11, because at the time we had moved to the US, by the way, in 1968 to 69, I watched the moon landings and so on. Then I became fascinated with what again I was exposed to. You see, so it's exposure that makes a big difference. By age 14, I had moved back to Greece and I got involved in art, drawing and design and all of that. I actually loved geometry as well. So draft design, all of that. And then on top of it, music. So what's interesting is, from working on machines, if you think about it, like first thing, the sewing machine, to the, let's say, the spirit of exploration or inquiry, like with a space program, to artistry, art, design, geometry, all of that. So it seems like Luthier sort of allowed me to have a little element of every one of these previous interests.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
So you do, and I've seen you do this, you do the artwork that goes around the hole in the guitar, and you do all that designing and painting of the guitars. I don't know how many luthiers do that as well, but your designs all look very exact, very, I guess I could say, geometrical.
Yeah. We, like I said, my fascination with geometry has been sort of there all along. And as we're talking, forgive me, I'm looking, maybe I could hold up something to the camera and show you a little bit of design. Here's one. I don't know how good this is going to show, but I'm going to show you in a second a design that I did, just line tracing on a piece of paper, that eventually became a pickguard on a Greek bazuki. So yeah, I mean, this was sort of freehand. But also I got influence on this particular one from ancient Greek vases because the theme is from ancient Greek mythology. So let me turn and see if it can make sense for here.
Yeah, I can see it.
Let me just get
Hold it back a little bit because it's bright. It's very bright. See, the paper is white. That's what the problem is. The camera can't handle it. We got a little bit of an idea though.
okay.
I see the lines. Right, hold it right there. Hold it right there.
Yeah, see,
Beautiful,
there's
beautiful.
Hercules there. There's Hercules and all that with the chains.
Yeah,
There's the helmet, the double-headed dog, and in the middle, the oval shape will become the sound hole of the instrument. You see,
the sound hole. That's the word that I was missing.
right. So you see now on the actual instrument, this design, I'll put it down. This design becomes is done with various materials, thin materials like about as thick as a business card or a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And these materials can be anything from wood, pearl, abalone, some imitation, imitation of turtle shell called tortoise.
Mm-hmm.
It can be imitation of other materials like semi-precious stones, like lapis lazuli, like turquoise, and so on. So you could have a very colorful layout, or sometimes other designs that are simpler can just pearloid or pearl is a nice design to put on a dark background.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see a lot of that in American instruments. On Greek instruments, you do see a lot of it. I'll grab another bazuki here and quickly show you that's near me. So see here, again, you have black back, which is plastic material that is used for pickguards, and the flowers are a pearloid material. So so that's that's what we do with the designs. You don't see a lot of it in American instruments. Like I said, you do see a lot of it in Greek and Middle Eastern. I did get to use a lot of my interests in this profession, that sort of have stayed with me all these years.
So you design, you build, you do the artwork, you do the varnishing as well. And you also, and I've seen you do this too, you invented your own soundboard. Can you explain what a soundboard is and how your soundboards are unique in the guitar instrument world?
So the soundboard is what we call the face. And again, let me just grab the same instrument that I just showed you. So this is a Greek bazuki, like we said, which is like a pear-shaped body, of like a figure-eight body that the guitar has.
Can we hear what a bazuki sounds like? Just, you don't have to play a song or anything. Just say
a little bit out of tune, and I'm just plugging it with my fingers. But that's the sound, at least. Okay.
Okay.
Out of tune. That wasn't. I mean, I had no plan to play this particular instrument. It just happened to be next to me. Mm-hmm. But that's the sound. It sort of sounds like a mandolin, I suppose, or a So this is the soundboard, what we also call the face, the front. That's the sound. When you mention the soundboard that you said I quote invented, it wasn't exactly that I invented that type. What I did is a variation on the bracing of the inside. So underneath the soundboard, if we picture a soundboard like a floor in a house, underneath we need supports that are in the house. They're called joists. In a musical instrument, they're called braces. So I did a variation, one of my own variations on bracing system, which was not totally original in the concept, but somewhat original in the particular design and the particular material.
See, I thought that the inside braces that you were talking about, I thought that was the soundboard, but you just corrected me. I understand that now.
The entire surface, top and bottom, is the soundboard, yes.
So being a luthier is a very unique profession, and people seek you out from all over the world. When you started your own business, speak to that a little bit. How did you get established in a brand new location? and how did it's going well? But how'd you do it?
Well, it's actually most of it is word of mouth. And another thing that I am very indebted to Peter Cavellis, like I said, who I apprenticed with, is that he not only taught me the crafts, he taught me a lot of his own values in terms of how he approached not only Luther, but business and even life, I would say. You know, he was a good, kind man that cared to share, and he shared with me. And the way he ran his business was mostly word of mouth. And, you know, depending on uh, doing good service and good quality work for people, for them to call their friends or have their friends come in when they needed work. And so that has worked, but also ever since, unfortunately, Peter's shop had to close down, Peter's son and his wife have been very kind to refer those clients that were still calling them to me. So, but yeah, it is mostly word of mouth and acquaintances. In the more recently, though, since my son made a really nice website for me, the Spartan Instruments website, which hopefully will update someday, right, Timothy?
I'll put it on the screen.
Yeah, yeah. So that has generated also a lot of interest, and you know, people can find me through my website as well. And some people do, you know, when they go searching online for Luthier, they can find me. And I do get people that are also interested in having, let's say, the unusual instrument repair, at least unusual in this country, meaning ethnic instruments from basically all over the world.
Mhm.
I mostly get a lot of Middle Eastern instruments, Greek and Middle Eastern.
Mhm.
But I've worked on things even from Persia and China and Japan and so on, you know. So, you know, if it's string instruments, they have enough common elements, and there is, or I should say, I have gained enough understanding to be able to work on them. Sometimes there are things that you sort of have to research.
Mhm.
Like if you brought to me an instrument that I've never seen before from whatever country that happens to be a country that I haven't seen an instrument, there may be things that I won't know, and I won't get involved in doing any work until I do a good amount of research and get good information, so I don't make wrong choice as to what with the instrument.
What's the most unusual instrument that somebody asked you to either to make or fix?
I would say because of their rarity, the Oriental instruments have been fairly unusual. At some point, I worked on one koto, which is like a plucked zither-like instrument from Japan, and I believe it was possibly the only one. Maybe there was a second one. I don't remember.
What was the name of that again?
The koto, Koto.
KOTO.
There's another Japanese instrument called the biwa, Biwa.
Mhm. Mhm.
There's what we call the moon lute in China, with an instrument with a round body
Mhm.
and a neck, sort of like a lute. I've worked on maybe a couple of those, and so on. You know, there's the Persian instruments are a little bit more uh, common. I've worked on instruments called tar from like the Azeri tradition and the country, in other words, between Persia and former Soviet Union. And those instruments have a soundboard. There's a skin, like a drum skin. So again, similar to the banjo. And then, like I said, the instruments from the Middle East, like the oud, and you see behind me, like see that instrument up there, that's a oud. Right there's just a piece of paper, a tag with the client's name on it, but that's what an oud typically looks like. I could probably hold up another instrument. Give me 1 second. So this is another oud that I happen to be working on, Len. I can actually,
Wow.
I'll take these clamps off as we're talking.
So that's the clamps are for the glue that's drying, correct?
Yes, yes, and it has been on there several hours now that I can remove them. I have the tape on because I just glued the soundboard on this. The tape will be removed, and the rest of the instrument cleaned, so on. I repaired several cracks, but you can see that basically the parts of the oud, there's the body, the neck on which I will make a fingerboard copy of the original because the original was sort of destroyed. There's a lot of marquetry on the oud, like the mosaic and so on. And
So, Chris, was
yeah.
this instrument owned by somebody previously and you remade it for them?
No, this actually belongs to a fellow who's a professional musician. I believe he's from Israel. He plays. He's a really good musician. He's also a cello player, and but he plays mostly Arabic music, so it's here for repair.
Wow, but it looks like you stripped it down and you're refinishing it and everything,
Oh,
right?
actually, oh no, actually, I have not. What you saw here is the
Oh, I see.
irregular.
It's just the tape that's around it. I see. And I see. I was going to say those look like Stars of David there on the
Yeah,
front.
yeah, very common in the Arabic, and I mean, the Star of David is very common between the Arabic and the Jewish culture,
Right.
as you probably know. So yeah, very,
Yes.
very common six-pointed stars there, and in all of the marquetry there. But no, I actually am not stripping and refinishing. Here, what you
Okay.
see on woods, actually, there's no varnish on the top. Sometimes very light coat of something. On this one, it's mostly previous poor repairs that that I'm trying to re-glue, and sometimes we have various degrees of success whether I can clean it or not. I'm still working on this too.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so I am doing the entire total restoration, meaning sometimes I need to totally disassemble the instrument and reassemble it.
I want to ask you a guitar question now because, as you know, I've dabbled in the guitar. I'm certainly no guitar player. I do it for a hobby. I write songs with it. It's fun. Now, does it depend on the quality of the guitar as to how successful somebody might be in doing bar chords?
Yes, to some degree it does. If the action of the string, meaning if we're playing on the neck with our left hand, the height of the string under our finger, if it's too much, if it's too high, it becomes difficult to hold the strings down.
Right.
If it's too strings are too close, also this could buzz. So yeah, that does determine to some degree the quality of the guitar in that sense.
Because you fixed my guitar, and it's a lot easier to play bar chords a little bit. You know what I mean? I couldn't even do a G, if you remember, and you told me
Right.
that my action was needed to be adjusted, and you fixed it.
Yeah, we had very high action on that instrument, so we managed to fix that. Yeah, yeah.
That's
So
great.
that is something that any player would notice with that kind of a problem. When we adjust the action, you can get a lot better playability.
Let's go back now to your childhood again, because that's what this show is all about. People who discover a passion. You discovered your passion after a couple of false starts. We can say that. And this passion uses a lot of the skills and talents that you have. What did your parents think of your chosen profession when you told them about what you wanted to do?
Which time? And what
Any
particular?
all the times. Let's hear that.
I think obviously in the beginning they knew that it was a child's interest, and they were amused. Eventually, when I got into it, I was already in my 20s when I got into Luthier. And by that time, I had also worked other odd jobs, mostly in restaurants and fast food places in this country. In Greece, we were actually farmers. We're from a mountain village and we were farmers.
I didn't know that. I was going to ask what your dad did.
Ah,
Wow.
He actually worked as also like let's call it the equivalent of a ranger or let's say a guard of the what a ranger would do this country, but there they sort of are let's say a police force, but guarding the fields and the actual farming property of people.
Right.
So my father was a farmer as well as, let's call it, a ranger. Maybe there is a term in English, I honestly don't know. And then when we came here, he worked in restaurants, and I eventually started working in restaurants and studied guitar. I discovered that I'm not as good as many other guitar players, and fortunately, at the same time, I discovered that I'm more interested in making instruments, and building and restoring, and so on.
Well, as I always tell you, I think you're a great guitar player. I wish I could play like you.
Thank you. But to answer your question a little bit more directly, my parents' reaction to specifically Luthery was, I don't think it was anything specific that I remember, simply because I was an adult by that time.
Right.
They sort of saw that, like most parents, when they can see that their kid is an adult and can hold their own and has a job and all that, I think they were kind of happy to see that and willing to let me go whichever way I was happy to go. I mean,
That's
they
great.
didn't understand music as much, although my father loved dancing and music, and he was actually an amateur player of the bazuki when I was a kid. And I forgot to mention that maybe that was another component of my fascination with instruments, because I remember, again, at around age 4, and I forgot to mention that one thing that I did is I used to sneak in the room where my father had his bazuki and pluck
Mhm.
the string. And I did it in secret, thinking that I would be punished if he found me.
So he played the bazuki. How was he on the bazuki?
It was pretty good for a person that played totally by ear. He could pick out a tune. If he listened to a tune, he could pretty much pick it out. So that, it's good talent that is a necessary talent for most musicians. So he had a fairly good degree, not great, but fairly.
Did he ever play any of the instruments that you made?
Actually, it's kind of hard to know, because I about 15 years ago, I made him one of the small bazuki, which is called the baglama, which is literally like no bigger than this length,
Right.
like about a foot and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a mini bazuki, but it is an actual instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And I made it here so I could easily bring it to him. And I brought it there for him, but he sort of had lost most of his interest in music by that time. And I honestly don't know if he played it occasionally.
Hmm. Wow. Well,
So
at least you made it for him. That was a nice thing. You got to give it to him.
yeah.
Well, Chris, what would you tell up and coming people who would like to be a luthier? How would they go about learning the craft?
So a few things actually. If they are a musician, also it's a great asset. I mean, they don't have to be a great musician if they have some interest in playing an instrument. It sort of gives them an insight, and also music and playing an instrument is a wonderful um, thing to do anyway. Uh, so even if they don't play an instrument, though, they could approach it from clearly the woodworking understanding of the craft. I would say to any young person, you should feel comfortable learning to use all kinds of hand tools, like from saws, chisels, knives. We use a lot of carving knives, like a lot of other woodworkers do. And actually, most of our tools are very similar to that other woodworkers use. There's very few tools that we have that are specialized. There are a few, but they're just very. Most of the tools are common to work. I would say to any young person, get a few tools, even a set of like X-Acto knives that are very easy to find in most craft stores. And they have disposable blades, sharp but disposable. And you can just get a piece of wood and just start carving whatever you want to carve. You could do a little totem. You can do carving on a flat surface, any kind of carving, any kind of woodworking, whittling, whatever you do will help you acquire the skills. I mean, even if you want to make a box, make a piece of simple furniture, make a table, make a chair, any of it is wonderful skills to acquire and to learn how to use these basic woodworking tools. And then you're going to get into using glue to assemble, because again, you can do that with any piece of furniture.
Wait, so repeat that again because you dropped out a little bit.
Oh, so I said, so people should, start with a simple set of carving knives, like X-Acto knives,
Hmm.
opposable blades, simple tools like saws and all that. Again, they can find in the crafts department in most stores. They can whittle or carve a simple piece of wood, and learn to use as many hand tools as you.
Okay, your picture has frozen, Chris. Hello? Oh boy, we're not having good luck here. Technical difficulties, folks.
Are you still there then? Oh,
All right, we dropped out for a second there.
where do you want me to go back to?
Let me ask the question again.
Yes.
Okay, okay, hold on, take two. So for people out there deciding for their, take three. So for people out there deciding on a career, would you recommend being a luthier? And if so, how would they go about it?
I would recommend it. Maybe the first thing they should do before they decide to become a luthier is take a course in business management, because you cannot get rich in this profession. At the most, you'll be able to make a living, like a middle class living. People that become rich are few, and sometimes they are because they had capital to invest, setting up a bigger shop, maybe employ other people. And this trade-off to that, one is on the plus side, yeah, you get to make a lot of instruments. On the minus side, you don't really make them by hand, and a lot of these instruments may be made by people other than you in a small shop. So for an individual luthier, it's still good to have a business course. Now, as far as the actual training, like I said, get some basic tools that can be found in any typical craft department of a shop, that is X-Acto knives, small hand saws, even a hammer, any of these tools that you can use to do some carving on wood, some whittling. Any of that is excellent experience. Once a young person feels comfortable with these skills, they can also start looking in their area, see if there's a luthier like myself or other people. They may be from a violin maker, again, to any other, let's say, specialty. Some people only work on certain instruments. Some people only work on guitars. Some work only on violins. I happen to work on most of the instruments. Just about anything that is a stringed instrument. Again, it's something that I inherited from Peter's shop and his expertise in all of these. So if a young person is lucky enough to find a luthier, they can always go introduce themselves, ask if there's a possibility of an apprenticeship. You never, even though sometimes it's difficult. For me, it's not possible because I have a small shop. I sort of have to stay busy with my workload, but I always, again, have learned from Peter to be generous with other people. I try to spend time sort of giving these ideas to people. And also, if they set up a little shop, let's say in their home, with some crafting, whatever they choose to do, I am happy to, when they come in and bring a piece of work, and to sort of give them my feedback and critique if they want it. And, some people may not have enough, let's say, the luxury of space, but they sometimes make do with what they have. If they have a little room, whatever, they can make do. Some people may be able to set up something with a bigger shop, but I am happy to at least have them come in so I can look at what and give them feedback. Like I said, people should not be discouraged from trying to approach other luthiers in their area, see if there's any apprenticeship. There are also schools that give some courses in making. In our area, there's the North Bennett Street School that I believe, or at least I know, that it has a department in violin making.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure if by now they have a department in making. I'm not sure, but I also know they do have a piano technology, which, again, the piano is a sort of a different category altogether. I mean, I don't work on pianos. It's sort of a whole separate skill, let's say. But so the North Bennett Street School is a school in the Boston area. But there are other luthiers like myself who have larger shops who sort of offer up courses for a fee, but they do offer courses in which usually you can learn how to build your own guitar. Let's say it's several lessons that can maybe spaced, I believe, a week apart, and you can sort of be guided through building your own instrument there.
So that's the North Bennett Street School, you said,
Yes.
and that's in Lowell.
No, actually, it's in the North End in Boston.
The North End in Boston. Okay, great. Well, I think we had a little bit of audio difficulties there, but if you could write down the names of those places, I can put them on the screen that you mentioned.
Sure. Yeah.
And when I'm editing this.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining me here, Chris, and I hope to see you soon. And keep up the good work. And in some ways, if I was mechanical, I would like to be a luthier, but I'm not mechanical.
Oh, by the way, you asked previously about what you called steam there, in case people are curious.
Yeah.
So it's not steam; it's vaporized water.
Yes.
And it's just to help balance the relative humidity in the shop. And if I may, just a quick tip again for instrument owners is, in the winter, we try to bring the humidity to a comfortable level because our environment is dry. In the summer, we try to bring humidity down, actually, because our environment is usually too humid. So that's what that mysterious device is in the back there.
Chris Pantazelos, thank you very much for joining me here on What Do You Want to Do? And thank you all for watching or listening, as the case may be. And until next time, what do you want to do?